G'day everyone, it's me, the Anti-Theocrat, back with another one. Before I go into the main content, it's a quick sales pitch. It's the only one you're getting, so enjoy it. Below these videos, I do attach all links to the information if there are links to be had. I also archive all of the information if that's possible. I also supply links to other platforms for my content and how to support me if you wish to do so. That'd be nice, but no requirement. That's it. That's my intro. That's my sales pitch. It's all I've got. It's all you're ever going to get. And now, on with the show. Okay, we're reading from this horrid book again. What can I tell you? It's a tween. These are essentially put forward as it's a way of putting forward science and topics for tweens. It's easy for them to read and follow. It's basically a headline and then a 2-page spread covering what the headline means. This book, to give you an idea of how ridiculously stupid it is, I will read you a title from a few pages back in case you haven't been keeping up with this. This is, by the way, the last video I'm going to make. If I don't get through this book, I'm going to stop and just call it quits. What is the relationship between violence and masculinity? In many ways, the world is a violent place, and in many ways, men control the world. Statement of fact. All right, these sorts of statements of fact are just in here without any explanation. It is just assumed that you will understand, or it is demanded that you will understand that men control the world. But it does nothing to explain women's part in society. This book essentially says women have no part in society. Men run it all. Does this mean that men are violent? Well, does it? That original statement doesn't say that. Two of the most violent situations in the world. So we're going to dive into the fact that obviously it does mean violence, right? We've made a statement of fact here. In many ways, the world is a violent place, and in many ways, men control the world. Therefore, it must be that men are violent because the world is violent. That's just the natural order of things according to the original statement. We then ask a question that reinforces that statement, driving us in a direction. Does that mean men are violent? Well, we've just had that laid out for us. Two of the most violent situations in the world. So here we go. Here's the evidence to back that. Has ever experience of the First World War and the Second World War. Okay, so the First World War and the Second World War were the wars to end all wars, essentially. That was what the purpose of them. Or one of the things said about them at the time. The First World War actually came about due to Europe being divided in an attempt to alleviate war. But let's forget all that. None of that will come about in this. This is just statements of fact supported by, well, stupid statements like, in which countries flexed their muscle in a lethal game of who can fight the longest. Both wars were in the first half of the 20th century. So they've summed up World War I and World War II as wars of attrition just for fun. Just so nations could flex their muscle against one another. We've totally done away with the fact that the division of Europe into Axis and Allied nations was a fire waiting to happen. It was meant to alleviate war by balancing the powers of Europe, so that there was no. It was too dangerous to go to war. Essentially, it was meant to create a balance in the powers that meant going to war would be too dangerous for anyone to undertake it. It was basically a powder keg waiting to go off. So forget all what happened before the First World War, leading up to the First World War. Then the Second World War, we forget the Nazis. We forget that the German leader who came to power had his own doctrines and ideas and beliefs on how the world would be a better place. And that in order to undertake this, he did a number of things to quell dissent in Germany, but then went on to invade Europe. The Second World War was not just nations deciding to bash heads together, and this is the sort of stupid thing this book comes up with. And they just put forward as statements of fact. World War One and World War Two, the First and Second World Wars, were just battles of attrition by people who wanted to bang heads, who we have already decided were men. We'll forget that during the First World War, the suffragettes, the suffragettes, not the suffragists, the Pankhursts in particular, dropped all their activity for women's rights to take up the White Feather campaign, which was a campaign to shame men to go to the front and fight in the trenches. They shamed men who'd been to the front and had served their time. They shamed men who were disabled and unable to get through the medicals in order to there are records of men lying, giving false names, all sorts of things. They are on record as having shamed boys who were under age into lying about their age and going to war. These women just saw men as a tool and didn't mind them being dead. And but we can ignore that. We can ignore the women who didn't mind sacrificing men. It was just about men bashing heads. Alright, now I do want to get through this, so let's see where we go. Oh, get out of there. Right. We are up to what effect do ideas about masculinity have on relationships? Okay, then there's some rubbish about relationships here. Just, the nature. You might make friends with people, you might not make friends with people. This is just a bullshit paragraph, this first one here, this crap. They did have to throw in that some relations may become sexual, has to be thrown in at the end, but most of this is just bullshit, right? Kids realise how friendships work. A harmful effect. Some of the most traditional ideas about masculinity can impact the relationships boys and men have. If boys grow up believing that they shouldn't express when they're upset or unhappy, if they're told to tell each other to man up or grow a pair or be a man or stop being a girl, then this might make them less likely to talk to friends and family when they're finding life difficult. There is an element of truth in this, but that's not entirely how it is, and there's nothing wrong with building emotionally strong men. Nobody likes simpering men, not even feminists. Feminists moan that male feminists are simpering, simps, a word in the current lexicon. Other words in the current lexicon that would cover it, the opposite of the female Karen, who is the woman who will complain to the manager that she's not getting her 2 cents change because of the 5 cent minimum coin denomination now in existence in Australia. And she'll want to see the manager about her 2 cents. And that's just an example that I've invented because fuck it probably happened. But yes, the opposite, the gender opposite or the sexual opposite of that is the Ken. And nobody fucking wants the Ken around them. A simpering, squelchy, screamy little girl of a man. Nobody wants that. And this is not just social, right? This is biological. Yes, okay, it can stop men talking. There's no problem with understanding the difference, though. That if you are feeling to the point of suicidal or something, that there is a point at which you are allowed to talk to people. Now, I've always been the sort of person who doesn't express my emotions. I was raised that way. But I do when they get on top of me. When there's no way that I can just drown it out with a beer and a night's sleep. Right? There are points at which you are allowed to talk. And I don't think telling boys any of these things actually has anything to do with that. I think it is just about not being a simpering little pansy. If this happens, they are less likely to get help and support they need in difficult times. You know, I actually think it's the simpering pansies who have the most problems. So if it's them who are, if it's the simpering pansies who are not going and getting help, then is it helping that we're raising men who think that whining is how to get through life? Putting on a brave face is unlikely to be the best way to get through times when you're feeling that things are difficult. Yeah, it can be hard, but that's not entirely a bad thing. Being soft is not always a good thing. It is not a particularly good thing in men or women. This is the problem with the world, is that we've given up any idea of personal responsibility. So if the world is not going your way, you take some responsibility for improving it rather than just whining at someone else about it. We are under no obligation to tell people all of our innermost feelings, and we may have very good reasons for keeping some things private or sharing only with those closest to us. But it can be useful to know that suffering in silence isn't necessary, and it can do more harm than good. But all you've done is say that sometimes it's okay to say, man up, grow a pair, be a man or stop being a girl. But it's also good to be able to talk to people. Well, make up your fucking mind. In 2016, 75% of all UK suicides were male. Nice of you to address that, because quite often through this book we found things being addressed in terms of how women suffer with it. It's been an amazing journey, this book, I tell you. Whilst the precise reasons for this are no doubt complicated, many people think the idea that real men are strong, silent type. Actually, I can tell you why some of this happens, and it's due to the fact that men are no longer allowed to be men. They're not allowed to be fathers, they're not allowed to be earners, they're not allowed to be strong and independent, they're not allowed to support their families. The family courts will remove their children from them. The system is built around stripping men of their assets and their children should they separate with a woman. Should a woman get bored with them, which is now the majority reason for women who do instigate most divorces, getting divorces, is they just got bored. And for that, a man gets stripped of everything. It is actually difficult to tell, and I have two sons. One is an adult and one is a child. It is difficult to tell a boy that he has any power in the world anymore, because the law is built against him. It is just about fucking impossible. I mean, when I married, I understood that if I got into a difficult situation in my relationships, I would end up living under a bridge. Because it's easier to just have nothing than to let somebody else just forcefully strip you of everything. That's my principle behind both of my relationships. I have two partners. I will mention this again. I have two life partners. I'm polyamorous. I have a son by each. This is my relationship. This is my life. But I went into this understanding that I could lose everything. This is how men now have to address the world. From a position of loss. First and foremost. And men who don't are going to find themselves being simpering pansies, because they're going to be begging people to give them what they are no longer legally allowed to beg for or ask for. So, yeah, you're saying we don't know why men are in these situations? It's because they have no control of their own lives. Okay. The campaign against living miserably, calm, This is a Pommy book, so this is a Pommy thing. As an award-winning charity dedicated to preventing male suicide, its patron, the rapper Professor Green, I don't fucking know any of this shit, and I don't think it matters, because it's a load of bollocks. Asking for help when things go bad is what everyone should be able to do, whatever their gender. Yes, but if there is no recourse, if at the end of the day you've told them to be happy about themselves, but they've still been stripped of their assets, their earnings, and their children, then it's not going to help, is it? Nothing is going to break that. That depression is always going to be there. In fact, just knowing that can be your life, that can be in itself a source of depression. I don't imagine, I know how guys who've gone their own way, what do they call themselves? Brain. But anyway, guys who've basically sworn off trying to form relationships with women, I don't imagine how they get through life. Because the whole basis behind what most of them are doing there is the knowledge that they have no power. And that's got to be hard to live with. I mean, I am in a relationship, and I have elements of that going on in my mind. And it is fucking hard to live with. Okay, selfish behaviour. Another issue we've discussed in this book is how stories about so-called real men are often about men taking control of situations. That's not such a terrible thing, getting their way and thinking about themselves only and not about the people around them. Well, yes, you have spun that lie. You have spun the lie that men don't do things because they are trying to make the world a better place or support their families or what have you. You have gone to some effort to do this. This is the idea that women have. It's the idea behind the tender years doctrine, and if you're looking up dangerous doctrines for men that have been accepted into law and custom, the tender years doctrine is one of the worst. But it's the idea that men are not nurturing or caring. This is just not what men are. But what it leaves out is that men are in fact nurturing and caring, that they give up so much of their lives in order to support and look after other people. If people act in this way, they're less likely to listen to how others are feeling. This is actually a situation for men that does come out of the being told to man up and grow up here. Is that a lot of us are also not very good at listening to other people's problems. We don't like that simpering male, but the fact that we don't like the simpering male can also be a problem when our female partners want to talk to us. So, yeah, look, I am in line with some of the things this book is saying. I'm just not in line with the way it says them. It is okay to listen to other people's problems. It is not okay to pander to the simpering male or the girl who cries every time she wants something at the same point. Right? There are limitations to what you should be allowing yourself to be suckered in for. If you think that's how a friend thinks about you, if they won't listen to you, if they're not interested in sharing, if they don't try, it's probably not a friend in the real sense of the word. Actually, it's probably the best friend in the fucking world. Because, right, one of the things that my partners have said to me in the past is that my being the emotional rock in the family, the hard point of this family, the point that doesn't break down every time something goes wrong, is one of the things they value about me. I do not collapse under pressure. If anything, I turn into a robot under pressure. When one of my partners fell off one of our horses many years back, ended up unconscious for 6 hours, I just became a machine. I did not get emotional. I managed to get some people to call for help. I managed to stabilise my partner. I have some first aid background. I stabilised my partner. I penned the horses so that they would be there when I got back for them. And then I saw my partner off to the hospital. I then sat at the hospital until I knew that she was stable, and even though she was still unconscious, there was nothing I could do. So I got on with sorting out our son and the horses and everything else, and then I came back to the hospital, by which time she was pretty much starting to come around. That emotional stability to be able to just get on with business and get things done when they are needed to be done is not a bad thing. Okay. So yes, having a friend who's a rock, who will sit and have a beer with you and not expect anything of you except to sit and have a beer and talk shit, that can be a massive emotional release. And they can be the best friends you've got. So don't fucking think you need the guy who's gonna cry with you on your shoulder. Or fucking, he's no good to you for anything. If those things are to do with your personal space, your body, then you are likely. What the fuck? Where did consensual sex come into this? I do understand the image that they've used here is of a man who was sexually harassed and assaulted. But how the fuck did this fit into this page? Are they now saying that strong men who don't cry every time they stub their toe, are sexual offenders? Is that where they went with this? I don't even think Terry Crew admits to that. So yes, I've got to read this quote under Terry because I've found him to be such a simp over this. And I understand. You know, it happened. It's not great, but you're meant to grow up, dude. We have seen powerful men in Hollywood and elsewhere finally held acceptable for sexual harassment and assault. He's talking about the casting couch nonsense. Can we also accept that the casting couch is a two-way street? The women benefited and profited and became successful because of the casting couch. They participated in that willingly. There was always a door. They always had the ability to walk out. These men, the only thing these men held over these women was the doorway to wealth. Was the doorway to success and power. That's all. That's all these men had. And these women decided that's what they wanted. This encouraged me to come forward with my own experience and reflect on the cult of toxic masculinity that exists in our society. No, see, this is where you're wrong, dude. Terry, you're a tosser. You've bought this shit and you're wrong. Moving from the casting couch and moving past Terry's experience, still none of this is addressing the known pedophilia that exists in the Hollywood sphere. It just doesn't. This is Terry saying, I was accosted by toxic masculinity in society. Well, no, you weren't, dude. You weren't. You were accosted by a man in your life. That's what happened. And a lot of these women who were Me Tooing were casting couch women who chose to sleep with people for the benefits they gained through doing so. You really want to know where the sex crimes are in Hollywood? It is with the pedophiles. And by the way, this has been an issue since the 90s that is still not talked about by people like Terry Crews. So, yeah. Don't fucking come at me with that shit. The Me Too shit. Okay, we'll go to the next page. Had enough of that. Sorry, Terry. I know you had a time, but you're wrong. Oh, right, that does it. I'll do it the other way. How does stereotyping affect children? If masculine behaviour is something that can be taught, then childhood is the place where the rules of masculinity are introduced, practiced, and learned. I could say exactly the same of femininity. I could say that we teach our girls that they can be anything they want to be, that they can do anything they want to do, that they have no responsibility for the actions of people around them, that they have no responsibility for their own actions because society made it that way, because masculinity forced it on them, because society is patriarchal, and therefore they have no responsibilities, but they can do anything. And they can be just like men, but without the responsibility that men are always taught to apply. The rules of masculinity, on the other hand, tell boys they're not allowed to hit girls. We're not allowed to punish girls. We're not allowed to make girls responsible for their actions. We can't report girls, so there's no recourse for them to take responsibility for their actions. You go and tell someone that a girl hit you, and it's not going to get you anywhere, is it? I know I was one of those boys. It was girls who tried things with me most of the time, and I wasn't allowed to hit them back, so they just took that as an open door. So, when are we going to start teaching femininity as a decent way for humans to behave, and responsible humans to behave? We don't need to change masculinity, for the record. We do, however, need everybody to be told they are responsible for their actions. Gender stereotypes. What are obvious biological and physical differences between boys and girls, but gender is far less obvious? No, you can get fucked. Right, this is just the idea that gender is anything you choose to want to be. I'm sorry, your attention-seeking behaviour is not my fucking responsibility. You are male or female. If you are transitioning, the whole word transition means male to or from female, right? That's what the word transition means. Moving from one to another. Now, it's true, you can go and take hormones and get yourself a nice pair of tits and keep your dick on, but that's like just not going the whole way. That's like piking out before you've done the job. Maybe you weren't serious, maybe you don't really need to be doing that. The whole purpose of transitioning is to alleviate gender dysphoria. Now, if all you've got is a feeling it would be nice to have tits, don't fucking mutilate yourself, dude. It's chemical castration you're doing. And yeah, I did play to the male side of this because this book is meant to be about masculinity. But it's no better when girls are given this idea that they can lob their tits off and suddenly be boys. No, this doesn't work. This gender politics shit is bullshit, and I'm not even reading that crap. Because gender does not mean your attention-seeking behaviour. Gender is a word associated with biological sex. The things that you describe as gender often, and this is something that gets me, because LBGT, whatever in the fuck all the rest of the alphabet that's tucked in behind that, lesbian is a sexuality. It is women who like women, fancy them sexually. By the way, this LBGT is the wrong way around. It should be GLB. That's it. There shouldn't be a T on the end. And the reason for that is it was the gay men's movement until the lesbians decided they needed a piece of it too, and now the gay men are essentially being bullied out of it. But gay or homosexual, well, homosexual applies to lesbians as well, so we'll go with lesbian and gay. Gay means men who take a sexual fancying to other men, right? This is a gender-specific sexuality. a biological sex one, then you're bisexual. And bisexual is not a fixed sexuality. You are essentially attracted to people male, female, and possibly anything in between. So we now have these trans interested people, or whatever the fuck they call them, because they have to invent a new term for everything. But back in the day, that was bisexual. Bisexual did not exclude any sexuality. The principle of bisexuality is it was, I like males and females, but it did not preclude anything that might be, transitioning between those things. It didn't preclude people saying, well, I'm queer as an attention-seeking device, so that we had to then have queer attracted people. No, because that's a queer person is generally just a woman who cut her hair short, right? That's a butch dyke in the old thinking. What the fuck? But anyway, and yeah, I'm going to keep using these old terms and these old definitions because they work. All this fucking new nonsense just confused the fuck out of people, right? You got gay, lesbian, bisexual. That's it. Transsexual is not a sexuality. It is not a sexuality. Technically, it is an ailment. I won't call it a disease. I won't call it a mental illness. I'll just call it an ailment. It's a more polite way of putting it, isn't it? Basically, the principle is gender dysphoria. This is the principle behind transitioning. Not being queer and cutting your hair short, right? Actual transitioning, where you do not feel comfortable in who you are, so you want to be something else at a biological level. Now, all you can ever do is LARP at that, because you are always going to have the biology that you were born with. But you can make serious changes by medical interaction. Medical, whatever the fuck you want to call it. It doesn't matter. What it is something other than a sexuality. Trans people are still attracted to males, females, or trans people. They are still attracted to the same biological sex things, attributes. Right? You don't get to invent a million different sexualities when there are only two sexes. It just doesn't work that way. You're either attracted to men, women, or both, or something, and the attraction to both can be flexible. So, I don't buy all that shit. Get fucked. Your gender politics is bullshit. It's just about trying to muddy the waters, to try and make you look more important, to seek attention. Okay, mixed messages. For men of the future, toys have become an area in which masculinity is encouraged. Popular boys' toys include an unsurprising selected... Get fucked. Seriously, get fucked. I always had a mind that worked in engineering. I had my eldest son, he liked to pull things apart, mechanical things apart. My youngest son, he's not really there yet. He's still building things out of Lego and still pulling things apart at the same time. But this has actually been shown to be something that is in our DNA. They've done the tests. We know the truth. You do not have to spin this shit that toys are making us male or female. Boys will look at objects and note objects from the earliest days, whereas girls will notice faces and people from their earliest days. So girls play with dolls because they represent people. They have faces. They are the sorts of objects that girls are attracted to. And boys go for the cars and the trucks and the planes because they are the sorts of objects that boys are attracted to. Now, it is true that there can be crossover. It is also true that a Lego man represents a human entity, a human in a construction set. Right? Yes, there is flexibility, but there is still very much a real biological reason behind this. This is not simply toys have made boys. You're a fucking idiot. Research by the Institute of Engineering and Technology in 2016 found toys with a science, technology, engineering and maths element were 3 times more likely to be targeted at boys. Targeted at boys. Only 9% of engineers in the UK are women. Okay. Little story about what I know about girls who go into engineering. They do 1, maybe 2 years of an engineering course, drop out for 6 months, come back and use their university entry, which they have already achieved, to go and study sociology or some stupid, lame subject like that. I know there are women in engineering fields. In fact, I know 2 female architects. But that doesn't mean... I trained with a female electrician. I trained with a female radio tech, who, by the way, dropped out of trade. But I know that there are women out there who have these interests, as there are boys out there. Both myself and my oldest son would have gone into childcare at some level or another. I actually thought about going for a teaching degree up till fairly recently. Because we have an affinity with children. We like working with children. I actually have a business which is focused around entertaining children. Well, families, but children are the basis of that. People want to entertain their kids. They're not looking for me to entertain them. That's just a sideline. By the way, when you are entertaining, don't entertain the kids, entertain the parents. The kids will buy it up. But entertain the parents, because they pay the bills and they'll get you back. They'll get you back to pay you for the next birthday party or whatever in the hell it is that they're paying you for. So make sure the parents are entertained by what you do. But the point is, there are crossovers. And these things are not terrible. They're also not indicative. What is indicative is that the reason that engineering toys are made for boys, not aimed at them, made for them, is because that is the audience that wants them. The primary audience. It doesn't stop a girl from walking into the aisle where these toys exist and saying, I want the toolbox, mummy. It just doesn't. And if mummy's excluding the girl from buying the toolbox, that's mummy's problem. I have never said to my sons, don't walk in the pink aisle, even though I fucking hate the pink aisle. I never told my sons to not look at dolls. My youngest has a bed full of stuffed toys, including my original Curious George from 40 odd years ago. You know, you people are stupid. The people who wrote this book are fucking stupid. The ideas that are in this book are stupid. And this is the social justice feminist narrative that we are supposed to be sucking up. This book was written for kids, so that kids can suck up these ideas. And they are just blatantly wrong. Starting early. Much of this gender stereotyping... Oh, fucking hell. It is not gender stereotyping. Right? There are definite biological differences between males and females. Even the simpiest bloody weasel male is more male than most females. Right. Okay, I'm skipping the rest of that, because fuck that shit. This here is just one entire page on feminist doctrine, feminist theory, It is statements of fact that are not supported or backed. Even the little insets research at the Institute for Engineering does not support what they're trying to say. It's just taken... It's given the context these people want to spin it. Why didn't they go to the study instead of the newspaper report by the London Evening Standard? Was the actual study more factual? Okay, what's to think about? Have you ever been treated in a particular way because of your gender? What kind of toys were you given when you were younger? Have you ever seen adults treating boys, and have you seen adults treating... Fucking hell. Fuck off. Just fuck off. You morons. Okay, well, we're going to look at Dr. Fen Coles. Actually, we're not, because this is another one of those... actually, this woman is a horrid piece of crap, so yes, we should look at her, but I think we might save her for another day, her and what she does. Okay, she is the co-director of Letterbox Library, a not-for-profit children's bookseller that specialises in inclusive and diverse books. She used to work in women's and LGBT rights sector and has a PhD in women's studies, interdisciplinary women's studies, whatever the fuck that means. So yes, this is an indoctrinator, a trained indoctrinator, and what she does is she directs books to schools that fit her indoctrination narrative. Is anyone surprised that she's in this book? Because I'm not. I'm not going to read anything about this woman. I think we'll cover her another time. But this is essentially just, again, one of those personal story things that's meant to drag you in. And the fact that they've gone from people who had really nothing to say to the fact that they've gone to someone who has real views about pansies and nancies and femininity and masculinity is probably right in line with the way these things should be done. You start with the people who have nothing in particular to say about the subject, and you work on to the ones who have a very defined nasty streak, because by then you've started to break down the possible backlash that people might have to that. Next page, sorry. I'm going to leave Doctor fucking feminist, Doctor of Feminist Studies. You might as well say you've got a doctorate in eating shit. How has masculinity affected the way we see ourselves? Hey. If you're an alien visiting planet Earth and you want to know what it means to be a man, or how to be masculine, or what masculinity looks like, popular culture would be a good place to start. Why do these people have a fixation on popular culture and Hollywood and television? Have they never been out in the real world? I'm probably asking the wrong question. They probably never have. I can assume that even if they were at a younger age, they seem to have set themselves up to be the arbiters of what's on TV and what's in the cinema, and how good, bad, or indifferent that is. Do they realise that these things are driven by audiences? That if it's not... I mean, how many movies do we have to see now where they've switched their protagonists to female and it's just crashed? The Batwoman series. What was the last one with Joker's girlfriend? I don't even know fucking who she is. Anyway, audiences drive these things, and hopefully audiences will drive them back to sanity one day. Okay, coded in conflict. Okay, this is going back a couple of chapters, isn't it? This is going back to that first bit of reading I did where masculinity and violence are the same thing. Oh, and at the end of that recent one where it turned into, sexual predators. Lots of cultural products, seen in lots of cultural products, from movies to music, sports and literature, art and computer games, and everything in between. Often ideas of what masculinity is based in conflict and aggression. No, it's not really. Masculinity, if we were to define masculinity, is a strength of nature, is having a strong character, being dedicated to whatever it is that you're doing. And I'm sorry if you find that to be wrong. Yes, so they're going to refer back to the Second World War. As we have already seen when we looked at masculinity and violence, page 18 and 19, the First and Second World Wars were huge moments of sustained military action that took millions of men from countries all over the world and turned them into soldiers. Yes, and what is that proof of? I know what it was proof of when you wrote about it in pages 18 and 19. Your fucking limited perspective on what history is. You've got no fucking idea of the history of the world. You keep dragging up these things as if it's just about people wanting to thump heads together. You don't know anything about the political and social history of the world. You know nothing about the fact that people have always gone to war. You ignore the fact that people like the Pankhursts, whatever the fuck, the feminists, not only supported the war but shamed men into going. That women often stand behind these actions. The women are often part of the cause of these actions, protecting homes and families and property and women and children, are often the motivation for men to go to these things. Basically, you've dumbed it down in the hope we'll just fucking miss that. This helped to create masculinity codes of aggression, What? World War I and II created masculinity codes of aggression, bravery, and violence that characterized a masculine. Hang on. Those wars very much were amongst the first to break down that idea. Men came away from those wars extremely damaged. Emotionally, physically damaged. Mentally damaged. Those wars were amongst the first ones in which we admitted that men who come home from wars are not the same. It is prior to those wars that we still sold the idea of the hero male, the neat pinned up uniform, and the staunch man, the beautiful moustache. That was how we sold warriors until the First and Second Wars. Yeah, just full of shit. Historical rewriting to the max. Cinematic stereotyping. I don't really care. But anyway, cinema has always been a reflection of idolized masculinity, offering a long line of male heroes who conform to masculine stereotypes after the second... You're going back to the fucking wars? There emerged the figure of the war hero, a man who fights bravely in battle and seeks to save the day. Yes, there were also victims. And programs like MASH have been thrown into that mix, which shows the horrors that people experienced. There are so many episodes of MASH that are very deep. You've seen some of the one that was shot all in first person, one single camera shot. These were pretty deep and fucking meaningful things. You see men coping with war in the best ways they possibly can, and this has been portrayed as well in many places, very well. So anyway, you go into James Bond. You don't think James Bond was a very fictionalized account of the Secret Service, do you? You don't think that at all? Sophisticated, tough, importantly irresistible to women, James Bond. Yeah, well, I don't care. I just don't care. Fucking hell. Do you think there are not men who get more women than the rest of us, and I've done my own share of getting pretty lucky. But there are men at all levels on that. And yeah, okay, so James Bond was a strong, confident man who, because of his budgets that he worked by, was able to wear the best of suits and look wealthy and well-to-do. And you think he didn't attract women? He probably attracted men as well. Bloody hell. Superheroes. No, sorry, I'm not going into the world of fiction. Because what are you going to do? Ignore Supergirl or Batwoman or the Catwoman, you know, the evil seductress. Oh, the original Catwoman was a beautiful character. Beautiful. I'm sorry, you're going into Marvel comics and superheroes. You fucking stupid. Muscles and movies. As we moved into the 1980s, we saw a new type of superhero. He had massive muscles and carried huge guns. People live in a world where you can't differentiate fiction from fact, can you? You just can't. I'm having to go to the next page. That was just fucking disgusting, that whole... Oh, God. You know, the idea that you can't tell fiction from fact, that you can't tell... that storytelling has to be based in reality. You people are fucking insane. Okay, we'll skip... Alright. What is the cost of masculinity? How are we going for time? I'm only going to... Oh, shit. I'm running out badly. What do we got? 3 pages tops. Let's see what we can get through. Masculinity applies to a constant pressure on boys and men to be the best. And the rules of masculinity games state that the most successful men are the ones with the most status. And... the most powerful and strongest, the most influential, generally the most alpha. And, in fact, wanting to be the alpha male, the male at the top of the hierarchy tree, is a phrase that is often used in conversations about men in relation to other men. And we talk about henpecking and the orders amongst women too. What about it? Do you think women don't fight to be the best? Women are utter bitches when put together in competitive situations. My partner walked away from a very good job, and one of the reasons that pushed her out of the job, well, she found a better job, but that was partly my instigating. I said, just let's get out of here. So she found a better job and moved out of what had been a very cozy job, and part of the reason she was glad to leave that job was that in her staff she'd inherited, not employed, she had one of the most bullying bitches on the planet. That woman drove a PhD student who was working in there to the point of a nervous breakdown. Do you think women don't have hierarchies? You're a fucking idiot if you don't. So, but yes, what's wrong with striving to be the best? And not necessarily the best at everything, but the best at anything you can do. I've always strived to be the best I can be at anything I want to do. I don't look for other people's approval. I just look for my own satisfaction in what I've done. And I think that's healthy. If I was happy to do half the job every fucking time, everything would be falling apart around me. I do my best in my relationship. I do my best with my tools. I do my best when I'm building a bus into a motorhome. And it's not always as good as other people do. I understand other people have better skills in some areas. They're better trained, better qualified. But I do have my own skills and qualifications. And to the best of my ability, I will be the absolute epitome of what it means to be those things. I don't see any problem with that. Why are you trying to take away competitive nature? Why are you trying to take away striving for greatness? Okay. I'm not going to read the rest of that because it's just crap. As it is, the Western... I will go into this because I have an Asian connection in my life. If anything, the Western push for being the best is a soft approach. Do you know what the mental state of Japanese children was after the economic crash and manufacturing moved out of Japan? Do you know what the mental state of young Chinese people is now when they are not succeeding at being the absolute best in school? These people are so hard driven it is destroying them. Suicide rates among young people are high in Japan. There are boys and girls these days with problems. They can't. Their mental problems. They can't even come out of their bedrooms because the world is too hard for them. They can't cope anymore. They've burnt out before even reaching adulthood. So yeah, ours is a fairly soft approach. I don't see any problem with it, however. The cost for women. We've already seen how masculinity negatively affects women in the world of work. No, we haven't. You fucking lied. Again, this is a statement of fact. We've seen that it negatively affects women. Full stop. Bang. There you go. We've seen that. You will now accept that as the truth. It is not true, and I told you back then. Domestic violence is a problem when it existed through history across countries. Again, a statement of fact. The domestic violence is violence perpetrated by men against women. It ignores all the violence perpetrated against men. An interesting fact that I still wish I had the evidence. I cannot find it anywhere. But New South Wales Health, the state in Australia in which I live, used to have a page on domestic violence against men. And it had very vague information, but it had information. It even had a list of people who are likely to perpetrate domestic violence on men. It included wives, partners, in-laws, children, right? The full list of everyone who lives in a house with a man or is associated with his household can essentially perpetrate domestic violence against him. And while we are taught not to hit back, but to wear these things, to man up, this is one of the dangerous areas in which manning up is not a good idea. However, hitting back can cost a man more. So we're forced to man up. But yes, domestic violence can be perpetrated by anybody on a man. And women instigate. We know now, factually, that women instigate most instances of domestic violence. They will stir a man up to the point of him becoming violent. I have been violated by... seriously violated. The seriousness of the violation is in the weapon that's used. And I've had 2 women in my life try to get men to beat me up. One of them was a girlfriend. The other one I only was a flatmate who I wouldn't sleep with. But I was sleeping with one girl. She was my girlfriend, or we were dating, whatever the fuck, I don't know. But I wasn't violent enough in bed. She wanted me to be that guy who got riled up and hit. That's what she wanted from me. In order to try and teach me a lesson, because this is coming from the guy who ended up sitting having drinks with me for the night, because I can talk my way out of a fight. But he'd been asked to beat me up on the premise that it would teach me a lesson on how to be a man in bed. But trust me, we didn't date anymore. A few women have complained about me being a man in bed, but this one wanted violence. But women instigate violence. They do. They really do. Even the ones who aren't directly asking for it in bed in specific ways. They will rile men. They know how to rile men. And women play emotional games amongst themselves, and they play them with men. And men do not do emotional games. So emotional games are harder for men to understand. And what happens when women do this to men is men often strike back. And it's not the right way to go about it. It's just what happens, and women know it. They are often there are people in the domestic violence and family law system who encourage women to do this in order that they can get evidence of violence and therefore take out orders. So yes, this is all bullshit, and again, statements of fact that have no basis in reality. 26% of women aged 16 to 59 have experienced some form of domestic abuse since the age of 16. Yeah, from their mothers? Because I tell you what, probably that many boys as well. In fact, I'd lay money on the bet that boys are more likely to get a flogging than a girl. And is that not domestic violence? And don't get me wrong, I'm the sort of parent who believes a smack is important when a smack is needed. Because you have to have definite lines on behaviour. And children will push against whatever boundaries you set. So I'm all for a smack, but a smack is for shock value only. When my mother broke a wooden spoon on my ass at 12 and I laughed at her for breaking the spoon, she got my father to flog me for the first time when he came home. Does that not qualify as domestic abuse? I think I probably had a justifiable reason for being punished myself. I was a bit of a rat bag. But are you saying that boys don't get abused? 7.5% of women. By the way, did I just mention that it was my mother who broke a wooden spoon? Yes, a weapon. A wooden spoon on my ass when I was 12. Actually, I remember it as 12. It could have been younger. But yes, she broke a wooden spoon on my ass. My father never used a weapon. By the way, I'm not accusing my parents of abusing me. No. Sorry, I have to put that in there. My parents punished me when I needed punishing, and I don't imagine I didn't need it. Trust me, when I pushed the boundaries later in life, I was a bit of a prick. 7.5% of women, 1.2 million, experienced domestic abuse in the year up to March 2017, compared to 4.3% of men. And I'd like to know how you come to those statistics, because I have never reported being abused by women, yet I have been. So where do you get your figures? There's one thing that feminists love, and that's to say, oh, but women never report, and that's we know that there's this many unreported violent things, and therefore violence is much more prevalent. Well, how much more prevalent do you think it is for men, when we know factually that men definitely do not report? I have never reported. Mind you, I got to a point where I no longer allow it either. The cost for the planet. On a global scale, masculinity might be responsible for the biggest and most dangerous threat to life we can ever imagine. War. Again, fuck off. I'm not reading the rest of that. War has been a two-edged sword. Most of human development, massive amounts of human development, have come through warfare or the implements of war. So, while you can say there's a huge cost, there are also benefits. And I don't think the benefits are necessarily a good thing when it comes to costing so many lives. But you don't get to just historically rewrite everything to fit your fucking narrative. There's far more to it than just war cost money. The development of the automobile is probably, and certainly to tracked vehicles for building and construction, for lifting, for more powerful motors. How do you think they move fucking tanks? Ay. What does sexuality have to do with masculinity? When it comes to masculinity, politics, it's hard to read in the book. It's much lighter on your thing. It's actually a really deep purple. I'm trying to read from the book. Sexuality is a major concern. Men are often encouraged to have sex with women, which is considered a very normal thing for men to do. What? Oh, I thought since the pill, women were also told they can shag anyone they want to. And fuck, I've met a few women who didn't mind shagging. I just had a guy tell me that he adores Thailand and Thai women because Thai women will just drop their pants for you. Well, you know. Yeah, I don't know. I just didn't think this was particularly a man thing. And I think when you consider that men are less likely to obtain sex through their entire lives than any single woman, you're full of shit. One of the biggest rules of modern masculinity is that a real man is heterosexual. No, I do not believe that to be the case. I know you do like to pin this, everyone who's not you is religious, and therefore everyone who is not you holds to a religious doctrine, and religious doctrine says men don't fuck other men. I'm sorry. I've been a lifelong atheist, and I don't care who fucks who. Not my business. Keep your fucking nose out of my bedroom, and I'll keep it out of yours. By the way, I have known gay guys who are just normal guys. Maybe you think they're all fucking pansies. Maybe you think they're all simps, but that's not the truth of it. Gay guys are guys just like the rest of us in most cases, I believe. It's certainly my experience. And physically attracted to women. Heterosexuality changes the idea. Look, you're trying to build heterosexuality as a construct here. That's what you're aiming for. Heterosexuality is not normal, it's just what we're taught to do. I'm sorry, no. The biological norm for any species is breeding and mating couples, especially in dimorphic species, in dimorphic species like our own, where we have male and female biological sexes. The norm is for heterosexual sexual contact, because it is what procreates, it is what builds the next generation. And a species is not a species if it can't create the next generation. So yeah, you're not selling me on that one. You are not selling me the idea that heterosexuality is just a construct. Heterosexuality is a biological reality. Does not mean there are no variances. For as long as there have been people, there have been men who are sexually attracted to men and women. It gives a flying fuck. Unimportant. Masculine men can be gay. Masculine men can be bisexual. Public and private. Nowadays it's usual to see gay men in the public eye, but in many stereotypes. Yes, and what about it? Look, I'm in a polyamorous family. It is not very often people will see us walking down the street hand in hand. We just don't do it. Yeah, I don't give a fuck. I just don't give a fuck. I'm not reading the rest of that either. It's not important. It doesn't matter if you are closeted about your sexuality. It really fucking doesn't. does matter whether it is legal or illegal or illegal. It does not matter whether or not you think you want to make it public, or whether or not the public are really going to be accepting of it. It just doesn't matter. My family are my family, and we do what we do to live. That's it. Anyway, all you've really told me is it's okay for gay men to hold hands now. Who cares? New men. No, fuck you. Liberalism. No. What you're talking about is leftism. Liberalism is something else. Leftism is a point of view that is open to different and welcoming of different types of people. Why would you assume that right-wing people on the right are not accepting of other people? This is a bullshit statement right out of the gate. I am a classic liberal by the way we're describing things at the moment. I have to describe myself as a classic liberal. I used to describe myself as left, but that's fucking insanity these days. So I'm a classic liberal. I have never in my life thought that the people on the right, politically, were against people having their own sexualities. Left and right in the centre are essentially different ways of looking at policy in a great many fields, but economically, socially, and, well, around things like abortion. But there's a fine line between left and right on these issues. You're hard left. You are the radicals of the left. And what you're comparing everyone else who's not with you, is a radical right. Now, I'm a lifelong atheist. I recall the growth of the atheist community online. I recall our battles with religious people trying to force religion into our educations, especially the non-scientific religious principles of creationism. So I remember fighting all these things. I was involved in those fights, not just online, but in my actual life. I had son in school during those years, and I was fighting the school. I was fighting the school system. It's my wife who had school prayers and school creeds banned from schools in our state because they applied a religious principle to state education that should never have been there. All right, the school creed mentioned "In God We Trust," so, that made it a religious principle. The two things came out on the same piece of paper when we were given them. In any case, I remember those battles. And the religious right is something very different from the right. The religious right is you. Because that's what you are. You've created a new religion. You are just the religious right, but your religion is what you are here calling liberalism, but you're full of shit because that's not what it is. You are progressives. No, it's not even progressives. You are as regressive as the right. You want to burn books like the right. You want to burn ideas and language. You are the radical right. You just don't have religion at your core. That's it. You don't have traditional religion at your core. Sorry. You are a cult. So yes, I'm not getting into any of this. It's just crap. KD Lang. Well, there's a fucking expert we needed to talk to. Again, you've gone for the celebrities, haven't you? And partly this is because, if you want to sell a product, a cult, to children, celebrities are a great way to go. I think masculinity is bravado against the mystery of the universe of women. Get fucked, KD Lang. I'm moving on. KD Lang's a fucking idiot. Lesbians. Never ask lesbians for advice on masculinity. Dr. Andy Williams. Dr. Andy Williams, well, we're on the personal accounts, aren't we? So we don't need to really read this. We'll read his brief. Dr. Andy Williams is a consultant physician for in sexual health and HIV medicine at the Royal London Hospital. His work focuses on male sexual health, care of people living with HIV, and medical education. And I've actually looked him up, and he's not a very interesting or particularly intriguing fellow. But anyway, this is just more of that. We've gone back to the more personal life story to drag us into the indoctrination completely. What is the future of masculinity? And I've run way over time, so let's get this done. This will be the last page I do. Oh yeah, the next one's only a personal thing anyway. In marriage, tradition dictates. What is the future of masculinity? Will it prove to be increasingly incompatible with the modern world? I don't think it is. It never has been. It can't be incompatible with being human. Some facts. Facts. This book wouldn't know a fact if it bit it on the arse. In marriage, tradition dictates that women take their husband's last name. The tradition that some continue... Well, do you understand why this tradition is? Because in the Western world, the lineage is through the male line. In the Jewish world, the lineage of Jewish is actually through the mother, as matrimonial, not patriarchy, not patriarchal. But yes, in the Western world, we have a patriarchal system for sharing, for distributing wealth and assets, which means the father dies, the assets belong to him. They can be passed to the mother or down through the male children. And yeah, it's a technical system, but I married a Chinese national, an entirely different system. So everything you're saying about marriage is based on your Western bias. In China, they don't have birth certificates. They have family books. Now, while a woman does move to another family book and becomes part of a family book, in which the oldest male holds the book and is the keeper of the family documents, she retains her name, which... as in my wife's case, the name that she has is associated with the village she's from. So she retains her association with her village. But she retains her family name. This is a bullshit Western principle, so yeah, don't care. Both of my partners have their birth names. Don't care. My sons have my name, but that was just how we did it. I don't think there was any requirement. Within families in many cultures, many is traditionally only left to the oldest son. If there are no sons, then it might be passed to another male family member. Yeah, actually, that's pretty much it, but yeah. This is something to do with being the defender and what have you. In many parts of the world, women have been denied the right to vote in political elections. Well, yes, maybe, but if you're going to go to the Western world, most men were also denied the vote until around about the same time as most women were given the vote, with the difference being when men in general were given the vote, they still had a social requirement. They could still be signed up to go to war and so forth. They still had to pay taxes. When women were given the vote, their husbands still had to pay taxes for them. You see, women were given an out from all responsibility, while men had to wear all the responsibility. Prior to that, men had borne the responsibility for their family, but within the family, the women held responsibilities for their own actions. When we handed over women to the government instead of the family, they were given no responsibility. Women are often paid less than men for doing the same job. Bullshit! bullshit, an absolute fucking lie. Women are paid in equal quantities for being the same, for holding the same qualification, doing the same job, and working the same hours, because that is legal in the Western world. There is no country in the Western world in which that is not the law. They don't fucking lie. The gender pay gap can be explained in Australia by a simple graph that appeared out of our census. At every age group, and I've mentioned this before, at every age group, women worked less hours than men. That was it. The gender wage gap that you go on about is simply explained by personal choice. Men are still sometimes seen as the head of the family or breadwinner. Yeah, and guess what? Women are behind that. As an at-home father, as someone who has not been the breadwinner in my family for the last 22 going on 23 years, I can tell you now that it is only women who have demanded that I go to work and support my family like I should, instead of sitting around with my children. That shows a total disrespect for the work of at-home mothers, but it's women who drive this, not men. Trust me. You offered a man a garage at home where he could sit and play with his kids, build toys for them, or get them interested in whatever in the hell he's doing, and he would be there. I love it. I do. I wish my kids were more into getting into my shed with me and constructing things. But I get to stay at home, be a parent. My eldest son was working for my business as an entertainer when he was 10 years old and getting paid for it, because I had the ability to do that. I wasn't working. Okay, I'm skipping out to speaking out. Changing the values associated with traditional masculinity is nothing new. No, because it's wank that the feminists have been dragging around for a long time. Gender inequality. No, not even going to read it, because that's just more of the same feminist bullshit. Big questions. This is where we want to go. Does this mean that modern masculinity promotes gender inequality? Will masculinity have to crumble? Fucking hell. Get fucked. Redefining masculinity. Maybe the future of masculinity is all about the kind of world we want for ourselves. I'm quite happy with the world. The world hasn't been a bad place for a long time. If we are happy with aggression and control and emotional inflexibility, then traditional masculinity... See, again, they've just said that men are aggressive and controlling, and these are not factual. Look up the Duluth model, the Wikipedia entry. All right? If you want to go for the dumbest source for learning anything, go to the Wikipedia entry. And it has a section there on the fact that one of the women, two people, a man and a woman essentially, were behind penning the Duluth model. Now, it was supposed to be a group of women, but these two people are associated with the actual penning of the narrative. And she came out and said, we did the studies and we couldn't prove that this was true, so we went ahead and wrote it anyway. The truth is, they couldn't show that men were overly aggressive or were in relationships in a power control basis. They could not prove that. It just was not true. By the way, the number of people who were in relationships for power were equally balanced across the genders. Yeah, sometimes women enjoy having power over people. Get that in your brain. It's a good thing that masculinity has finally been redefined. In 2011, the mental health charity Mind, Men's Health Forum, we've heard about them before. They must be feminist. Anyway, I'm not going to read the rest of that, because I do not believe we are redefining masculinity. I do believe this is the same definition the feminists have used since they penned the idea that masculinity was Satan itself. Anyway, I'm going to mention the little image at the bottom. If one man can destroy everything, why can't one girl change it? Just so we know. This girl has been given a world stage, and her claim to fame is she got shot in the face. That's it. That's it. Other than that, she's been a spokeswoman for feminism. She's really not that special. I actually had a image come across my Facebook page that had a dozen or so wonderful women. She was on it. Her fame is being shot in the face. A terrible enough thing, but hardly wonderful. You set the bar for wonderful very low. Also on there was a Pankhurst woman, Emmeline, I think it is, Pankhurst or whatever, who went out and fueled the white feather campaign. Yes. If this is your measure of wonderful, you've set the bar extremely low. Anyway, how do we end up back at Dr. Andy Williams? Because he's not the next page. This was the next one, Selena Godden, and I would ignore this bitch with... I would... She's not worth time of day. But that's it. That's all there is of this book. I'm going to give it a wide berth in future. It's going into my humour section, where I keep some interest in religious texts and so forth in my library, and I will try never to bring it out and read it ever again. And that's it. I've had enough. I'm going. I do not want to do this anymore. I've had enough of this. I'm out of here. I've been the anti-theocrat. May your gods remain fictional, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, have fun.